Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hello there. Welcome to the program. It's the 20th of February. We call it President's Day for some reason, and nobody knows what we're celebrating, and we aren't. We just go to sales or ignore it altogether, and federal workers get the day off, I guess. I don't know. My garbage is on track. Same thing. It's odd who acknowledges the holiday and who doesn't, and actually nobody acknowledges it. It's a bullshit holiday. Let's acknowledge that. Yeah. There is so much to talk about. I do not know where to begin. I really don't. I guess I could just throw a dart at a list I have here of things I definitely want to share. I don't know what your priorities would be. We've got Biden's visit to Ukraine. We've got the anniversary of the Ukraine war. We have Jimmy Carter on his deathbed. We have John Fetterman hospitalized. There is so much. We've got still lots of stuff from the train derailment. These are all, big and worthy stories, and I haven't really even scratched the surface. So I don't know where to start. I know where else. I'll start in none of those places. I will start with a new word that I came upon while reading an angry retort from the British Prime Minister. Go ahead. I dare you to tell me his name. They've been through so many prime ministers in the last few years that hard to keep up. And I think I'm blanking on his first name. Starts with an R, right? Is it Sunak? Anyway, the British Prime Minister came out with a very British word. I'm sure the Brits didn't freak when they heard it, but I did because I never heard it in my life, and it's wonderful. It is on the order of gobsmacked. And it has to do with another story, which I'm not going to get into, that involves the late children's author Roald Dahl. What a strange name. So it was a Norwegian name, although he is an acclaimed British author. Children's books, and revered for his children's books. I don't revere him. I long ago knew of him only as just a deranged anti-Semite. And apparently, I don't know if that had anything to do with what the British PM was freaking out about, but apparently the publishing house that publishes Dahl's books brought in some sensitivity readers or something. I don't know, some woke thing, and went through his books to see if they could take certain words out, because I'm sure he was also racist and all kind. It wouldn't pass muster now, his stuff. And they began tinkering with his books, much like what happened to our revered Dr. Seuss here. And all I can tell you is the word that the PM said. He was horrified. Yeah, don't muck up, the books. Just leave the books. They can be put in historical context. Leave them alone. And the word he used is we shouldn't gobblefunk them. Gobblefunk. I would think gobblefunk, if I saw it standing alone, was a noun, but he used it as a verb. We shouldn't gobblefunk them, and it's one of those sort of, you can immediately by the way it's used, by what he's saying, you get the definition, I guess. Actually, I hadn't bothered to see if there is a definition, or if that is actually a word that people other than the Brits employ. But let me quickly look it up. Gobblefunk, because I laughed out loud when I saw it. Yeah, there it is, I think. No? Gobblefunk. Rishi Sunak says Roald Dahl publishers shouldn't gobblefunk around. Oh, well, wait a minute. Then that sounds like a verb. It is a verb. Apparently it's a word, I think, that Dahl made up and is from one of his books. And by gobblefunking, it means playing around. And Dahl is noted for inventing lots of words. So gobblefunk is one. Now it makes more sense. I'm sure, actually, it'd probably be interesting to look up some of the other Dahl words. I'm sure they're delightful. Oh, Bob's telling me something I don't know. He says, guess which president? Oh, no. Trump? Guess which president is visiting East Palestine this week? You're kidding. Well, toxic things tend to, attract other toxic things. He'll be perfect there. Tell him to wallow around and breathe deeply. Damn, unbelievable. Well, okay, that's not what I was expecting. The current president, of course, flew in and flew out very rapidly, Ukraine. And I never quite get that kind of stagecraft, but fine. And a lot of people are saying, my God, he took his life in his hands. That's crazy. There were air raid sirens. The place could be under attack. He also, my understanding is, he informed the Russians before he left, I'm going. So they'd have a target. I don't quite comprehend that, but whatever. I think Biden's looking really strong. If you don't look real close, he looks strong. I'm starting to, I know he's going to run, and I'm starting to try to get behind that because I don't know. But I think in order for him to run and win, I think he needs a new vice president, because whoever is in that vice presidential spot, given the president's age, could well end up being president. So you want to make sure whoever is on the second on the ticket would be absolutely presidential ready. No Sarah Palins, no Dan Quayles. I don't know. I don't even want to talk about that at the moment. But as long as I'm on Ukraine, I must say, I've been reading lots of stuff about we can't, this war is going to grind on. We cannot desert them. This is extraordinarily important. And I agree with all that. And I'm not usually on the keep the war going side. throughout my life, I don't jump on war bandwagons readily. I don't not, like some's knee-jerk reaction is you never, ever go to war. Well, I think sometimes you have to. There are things worth fighting for. If not to fight means that something untoward is going to happen. So I just want to say that I am with the hawkish camp in regard to Ukraine, and mostly because we simply cannot allow this lunatic-led Russia to win. Can't. Just cannot. And also seeing the extraordinary bravery of the Ukrainian people, this David and Goliath fight, everybody having written them off and that they stood. It's hard not to want to have their back for that reason alone. But that's not it. It's a bigger thing. It's a geopolitical democracy against crazed autocracy. That's a line you cannot not hold. I noted that the German film All Quiet on the Western Front, which I believe is also nominated for Best Picture for an Oscar, won the British equivalent of Best Picture of the Year, apparently this weekend, the BAFTA award. And I watched it up until, I think I told you this, there was maybe 20 minutes left, and I couldn't finish it. It's long, it's horror, it's in terms of an anti-war film, if you ever encounter some young person eager to join a battle because he or she thinks of it as a wondrous adventure, it's the kind of film you'd want to show them right away. The horror of war, and particularly that war, World War I. But I was reminded of it just the other day. I was watching some report, and they were digging trenches. And the fact is that this current war, Ukraine-Russia, is right now being fought, the front line, as pretty much trench warfare. Trench warfare to the point that you're fighting literally for a few feet. Both sides dug in. The Russians with a ton more people that they don't see as people, that they see as cannon fodder, or at least Putin does. And so he can just keep sending these people, I guess, to just get slaughtered. But the Ukrainians are dying too. And it's trench warfare. It is exactly like World War I, except different things happening in the sky and a few other places. In that regard, though, there's nothing new under the sun. The people are dying in trenches. There was a story today about a Ukrainian couple, a man and a woman, who fought alongside each other and were in the trenches together and died in the trenches together. No, we can't gobblefunk around with this. We got to win it. And it's not like we're fighting it. We ain't in the trenches. We're being asked to provide weaponry. So, just saying. Let me drop back to, I really want to get to Fetterman. Let me drop back, though, to East Palestine. I have to think every time I say that because I want to say Palestine. East Palestine. And I have to say, I brought up a question to my son the other night, and he cracked up laughing. I guess I did mean it as a joke, but I said to him, I keep thinking East Palestine. What is it? A town of how much? What? 4,000 people or something? Around there. Little teeny village, East Palestine. First of all, place names are odd, but to name it Palestine and then to pronounce it as they do, okay, I find that a little odd. As I say, I have to think about it every time I see it. But the fact that surely you've thought too, haven't you, that it's East Palestine suggests what? Were the citizens of West Palestine also told to get out of their homes? My sense is that there is no West Palestine. So again, I'm left with the question of, well, then why is it East Palestine? I'm just asking. Has that question come up? Because when a story gets, been in the news for weeks, it's hard to come up with a question that no one else has asked. That's my question. Is there a West Palestine? And if not, why the hell did the founding fathers put the East in front of it? So that's all I'm asking. And I'm not gobble-funking around. Okay. Hang on. Barbara sent me this. Charlie Kirk suggests the residents of East Palestine are being punished for voting Republican. What? Is it because, so the people of East Palestine voted for Trump by 80% or so. So what was he saying? So he ended up saying they constantly are voting for people whose policies or lack thereof will kill them or reduce their quality of life or whatever. The people who are harmed most by an unfunctional, dysfunctional government are often the people who vote for the people who produce dysfunctional government. I suppose that's what Charlie Kirk is getting at. I've noted the same. Yeah. And I'm so sorry. When you get old, you have a tendency to repeat yourself, or you forget that you already told somebody something. In fact, I once had a conversation, I think it was with my brother, who was complaining, this is years ago, that our mother was starting to repeat the same things over and over again. She starts up with, "Oh, I love that, I remember." And the thing is, I realized that my brother, who was complaining about it, does the same thing himself. So this is why. Did I tell you that I saw? There's two things I've seen on television recently that I found, one truly compelling, and that is David Letterman interview with Volodymyr Zelensky. And it is really moving. It's old. It was done 3 months into the war about, and Letterman went there and interviewed him in a subway underground in the safety of the the subway, and it is powerful stuff. And I would argue that anyone who's like saying, well, I don't know why we should be over there doing this or that or giving our money. Look, we got needs here. We got people. They should, watch that. Okay. The other thing I'm going to let go because we need to move along here. But before I get off of East Palestine, I have to tell you the Times today has a full page on train derailments in this country. And there are, give or take a few here and there are like 1,000 train derailments every year in the United States, some of which kill people. Some of the trains are carrying, flammable, toxic, blah, 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 and they're going off the tracks left, right, and center. There is a picture of the United States, a drawing of a map of the U.S., and they note there's little spots where there's been a train derailment. And I have to tell you, you look at it, and there is an extraordinary cluster where the map goes black because there's so many black dots that it just forms a blotch. And guess where that cluster is? That'd be here. That'd be the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania, with the biggest part of the blob really pretty much where Pittsburgh is. We are one of the derailment sites that, I don't know, do we get an award for that? Trains are going off the tracks here, left, right, and center. The other dot that is huge is Chicago. Chicago, Gary, that area is just a big, big, big. But there is a little detail where they've actually said specifically that derailments have clustered in northern Ohio and western Pennsylvania. And the thing is, efforts to make all of this safer so this doesn't happen as often have been fought tooth and nail, of course, by the industry and by the Republicans. Which is why somebody like a Charlie Kirk would say, well, they voted for Republicans is what Republicans give you. Toxic air, toxic water, run for your lives. And there's been a 36% spike in rail hazmat violations over the last 5 years. You know, that train was almost 2 miles long. A crew of 2. And you'll recall the strike. The rail. These workers are saying that they are, working under outrageous conditions. I mean, it's just unbelievable. The reality is we are a lawless nation, and that comes from the top down, from Washington D.C. and the Republicans and the lobbyists on down. The fact that is, as the Republican governor of Ohio said without apparently blinking in a rage, that Norfolk Southern was legally not required to notify anybody in Ohio about the fact that they were going to be transporting these materials through the state, because they were not thought to be hazardous enough. You know, it's hard not to laugh. And because of that, when the derailment happened, a fire broke out. Local firefighters raced to the scene. There's 100-foot flames. There's strong chemical smells permeating the air. And the firefighters don't have a clue what they're breathing. Because we are a country that believes that the right hand should not know what the left hand is doing. My God. My God. All right, so there's that. And I think you've seen, because it's getting attention like this doesn't happen every day in the country, that the stockholders of Norfolk Southern have been rewarded just handsomely with massive payments, increased share prices, because Norfolk Southern's been making money hand over fist, because it's fought everything that would have meant, improving their trains, their tracks. No, they tell we're keeping a lid on costs. And not to mention, we're spending a ton of money. I'll tell you what we're doing with it. We ain't giving it to our workers. We're not giving it to improve the trains. We are doing it to pay lobbyists to keep the government from instituting safety requirements. I mean, the most basic any requirement, they fight. Stronger tank cars, they fought it. Better brakes, they fought it. Even what they have to tell communities that these trains are going through. I fought it tooth and nail, and usually, you know what? They win. So there's that. Fetterman. When did that happen that we saw that Thursday night, Friday, that he's now hospitalized for depression and getting treatment in a hospital situation for serious depression. Now, I have to tell you, I mean, my heart goes out to him, because I mean, I don't even know where to start. Here's a guy who is famous for building a brand, and we've talked about it. And what is that brand? That brand, first of all, he had going for him his huge stature and his just whole physical sense, that sort of literally monstrous, bald, hulking figure. And he was like the Carhartt hoodies, sort of like the epitome of a certain sense of what a man looks like. A real man. And then to almost die. And he did. He almost died, felled by a serious stroke. in his, what? Was he 50, 51? And months and months and months later, still unable to be that man he was. Trouble comprehending words, trouble speaking the words, finding the words, having to have help for things that most people don't need help for, and having to defend his decision to continue to run for this most consequential Senate seat. And I can imagine that this guy, this human being, never really had the opportunity to recover as he should, to come to terms with his diminished state and with the huge responsibility that he had. The party, to the country, to the people. And that burden is still there. And yet to have this cacophony in his head and this and to be the center of attention. I mean, everybody's watching you all the time. I mean, this is where standing with your head way above the crowd. I mean, I said about him the times that I've seen him in public, he is exceedingly uncomfortable. Doesn't do small talk. Looks like somebody who, given a chance, would just go tearing out the door. It's an odd fit for somebody with political aspirations, and I never could figure it. How does a guy who's so clearly socially awkward, and he is socially awkward before the stroke, who the hell wouldn't be depressed? And then you hear that it is totally not uncommon for somebody suffering a stroke to then have to suffer through a resulting depression. And to have to be dealing with all of that, with all of us talking about him, with the cameras on him, with a minute he emerges from his hospital stay. You know, if you were to go into the hospital for whatever reason, let alone a mental health reason, it's not something that you want cameras in your face when you walk out. Microphones in your face asking for explanations or what do you have to say and this and that, and you're still having trouble processing them. I can't even imagine. I have railed about the stigma of mental illness ever from the time I had a microphone in front of my face. Because from the time I was a child, I have suffered from depression and anxiety. I mean, it's informed and informed my reality. And I spoke openly on the radio about, going to this psychiatrist, that psychiatrist, being on antidepressants, blah, 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 blah. And people would write me and say, stop. Don't say that. It's better now. But it's still, you can see from what some people are saying, like, well, he shouldn't. I don't know. The question is, should he serve? It's a legitimate question. If you're somebody who cares about the man, I can't imagine what I know. It's what I don't know. It is conceivable that the best thing for him would be to step down and just take care of himself. But I doubt that would happen. I don't know. And I don't pretend to know. My heart goes out to him. And can you imagine having to? The challenges he faces. If he were in perfect health, physical and mental, but a first-time senator, and with this, the look and everybody, staring at him and thinking he's just such great fodder for this and that, and yet having to go to the Senate of the United States and learn its ways and navigate and learn how to be a senator. It's not like you go to senator school, yet you learn the job on the job. And you can imagine he's doing that. Physically ill and mentally ill. Poor soul. Getting some of your emails in here. This is from Chuck. A couple of things. First, the Letterman visit to Ukraine was fascinating. Not to mention the fact that he attempted doing comedy at times, which was a heartfelt contrast to what people were going through. Well, he was sitting across from another comedian, Zelensky, who knew exactly. It was a few times in the interview. It's two comedians totally understand, getting it, just getting it. I thought it was wonderful. And he says, by the way, just a correction, he visited Ukraine in October. Oh, really? Why'd I think it was just a few months into the war? Okay, it doesn't matter. He visited Ukraine in October of 22. And Chuck also says, I recommend everyone watch that. That's on Letterman's show. What's that show? My next guest needs no introduction. I forget what the name of the show is. Look it up. That is so worth. It made me. I cried. I laughed. It's just compelling. Secondly, Chuck writes, there is no doubt that railway companies are pushing the limits of what the tracks are able to handle. They're double stacking cars. They're speeding through populous areas. It is just a matter of time. Or something like what happened in East Palestine happens right here. Yeah, how about it? In the center of Pittsburgh. Or, I'm close. I'm thinking, like where the East Busway is, that's a hop, skip, and jump from where I am, and the tracks are right next to that. Those are the trains I hear. And I often wonder, as I listen to them now, what are you carrying as its haunting whistle? Which we've talked about before. I think Michael from the Cynics said how comforting that sound has always been. It's always been there. I think a lot of us feel that way. And now it's not as comforting. It's chilling, perhaps. Joe writes, I fought this same battle with depression as Fetterman. I'm glad he can get help. I just wish everyone had a similar access to help. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I've lost a few friends who had no access to help. Heartbreaking. I'm sorry, Joyce. You know how at the bottom of, if you text somebody or email them, it says sent from sent from my iPad or iPod or iPhone. His says sent from my sockless big toe. Joe, thank you. Good to hear from you. Oh, God. Oh, big shocker. Chris is sending me. Apparently, Ron DeSantis took advantage of advanced placement classes when he was in high school. the same classes that he now wants to deny to. I can't imagine why anybody would live there if you're raising children. If you're a wrinkled old person with money and you don't have a problem giving it to that mucked up state, fine. But if you have children, they're going to be going to a public school system. I can't imagine. I really can't. Oh, God, guys. So Jimmy Carter. There was a piece in the Washington Post that is fascinating about him. I thought he, as you know, was a brilliant guy, and he was considered a nuclear expert. So he graduates from Annapolis the year after World War II ends. And as a lieutenant, took assignment aboard had to be one of the first nuclear submarines, or it wasn't even a nuclear submarine yet. I don't know. But listen to this. Maybe it wasn't a nuclear submarine yet. But the president is Harry Truman. And Harry Truman, as you know, really became the first president to attempt, and actually, I think, pretty much pulled it off, to desegregate the military. And so the military that this young Jimmy Carter went into was integrated. And his submarine was docked in Bermuda at one point. And the British, who ran Bermuda, invited members of the submarine crew to a party. White members of the submarine crew to a party. And Lieutenant Jimmy Carter won over the entire crew. And they refused to attend because it was segregated. And then in 1952, he was part of the development of the first nuclear submarine. That's okay. And he was to be the commanding officer of the USS Seawolf. And then something happened. There was a partial meltdown of a nuclear facility, nuclear reactor, power reactor in Canada. And the Canadians were asking for help. And one of the people that the U.S. sent was Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter and these others managed to fix the damaged core. And it talks about what they did. I mean, this would have been a real catastrophe. So what they did, God, he was so smart. Because of the intensity of the radiation, a human wearing what was considered protective gear at the time could only spend 90 seconds in the core trying to fix whatever was wrong. And so to go about fixing it, they constructed an exact duplicate of the core that they were going to attempt to repair. And then they practiced over and over again with different teams, dashing in to the duplicate and doing, unscrewing a bolt within the 90 and getting out within the 90 seconds. And then the next team would go in and pick up from there. But before they went into the actual reactor, they practiced this over and over again in this duplicate that they had assembled. And when they went to actually do it, every time one of his men managed to, let's say, unscrew a bolt that had to be unscrewed, someone would take that same bolt out of the duplicate. And then the next group or man would prep for the next step in the duplicate and before heading into the real reactor. Carter was one of the people who went in. The mission was successful. The damaged core was removed. Everything, disaster averted. But Carter and all the other guys who went in there had to be tested for radioactivity for months and months and months after, urine, fecal samples. And it wasn't until an interview in 2008 that Carter acknowledged that for 6 months, his urine tested positive for radioactivity. And he said, I'll tell you, it's 1,000 times more radiation that we were subjected to than they would allow anybody to be subjected to now. It was the early stages of nuclear power, and we just didn't know enough. And then Carter went back to command the nuclear submarine, but his dad died, and he sought immediate release from the Navy to take over the farm. And so he was discharged in 1953. But I gotta tell you, Jimmy Carter, what a Christian. In a world where so many debase and abuse the teachings of Christianity, Jimmy Carter lived the life of a true Christian. And you'd be hard pressed to find a more exemplary life lived than his. And I wish him. I don't know. I wish him. What do you wish? A good death? Wow. Hey, Marianne, you sent me an email, and guess what happened? Your email has been blocked off by this big gold thing, and it says, "Be careful with this message. Marianne has never sent you messages using this email address. Avoid replying to this email unless you reach out to the sender by other means." Jeez. Well, I'm just telling you, Marianne, if you're listening, I ain't responding. I don't know what the hell that was. The question was, do you think if the train was on its way to the cracker plant? Well, we brought that up the other day. I don't know. It ended. Its end point was at a huge rail yard where trains are switched out and new trains configured, just 8 miles from where the cracker plant is. So I have no idea, though. That's the kind of crap that would be going into that cracker plant. So you can bet that the materials going into that cracker plant are nothing you'd want to have spilled in your backyard. Ray writes, I believe there is a Palestine, Ohio on the western end of the state. Oh, is that the reason? So there was already a Palestine in the western part? Well, that would give us, that would explain something. But, usually if there's an east and a west, it's right there. So it just seemed, but okay. Whatever. Thank you. Oh, my God. The other thing I wanted to just give you a heads up about that's on television. And I was reluctant to watch it, but I started watching it last night, and then I got hooked in, even though I was finding it just so unbearable to watch. But I am going to, I'm not recommending it. It's on Hulu, and it's called Stolen Youth, and it's a documentary, 3-part documentary, so it's 3 hours. I think about 3 hours long. And it is about a story that I remember reading, seeing bits about it in the paper, but never really immersing myself in it. It is the most horrific story. It's about what happened to a group of students at Sarah Lawrence College about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And the horror of what happened to them didn't come out for a good 10 years. And so the man who perpetrated this, the father of one of the students, who essentially imprisoned his daughter's friends on campus for and what I want to know is what's with Sarah Lawrence. I would no more let my child go to a university or a college like that, where you can have a guy literally abusing the students and the university doesn't know, it doesn't do anything, when, believe me, there were plenty of opportunities to know. The guy was obviously brilliant and trained in emotional torture. And what makes this so hard to watch is that the years that he did this to these kids, and they were 18, 19, 20, and then some of them 21, 22, 23, he destroyed them, destroyed their lives, took them from their parents, took a woman who was a Harvard graduate. This is a sister of one of the Sarah Lawrence kids who got pulled in. This woman was a full scholarship to Harvard from a poor family. Full scholarship to Harvard, then gets out and goes to Columbia Medical School. And again, full scholarship. She's just this brilliant, beautiful, amazing woman. And he gets his hands on her. And oh my God, what's astonishing is he videotaped everything. He subjected them to interrogations where this is what, like in the Manchurian Candidate, if you ever saw that, what the North Koreans did to break down and brainwash POWs. And this is what he did and videoed the whole thing. And your ability to endure watching torture, because that's what a lot of the video is, the torture of these kids. Who later, are interviewed in the documentary beyond that they would, I don't know. I'm very conflicted because it almost felt like we shouldn't watch. But I was so stunned at how vulnerable. Smart. These are smart kids. Really smart. How vulnerable people can be to manipulation. Emotional manipulation. And I guess why I was just so blown away by seeing it actually happen in this more, constrained way in one house with one group of victims and one truly evil man, who, by the way, was the best man at Bernie Kerrick's wedding. Bernie Kerrick, the disgraced former Rudy Giuliani pal and police commander. And Kerrick is in the piece. He's interviewed as well. He comes off looking like a good guy. This man is true evil. So yeah, I watched out of the fact because I've been asking the same question for so long now of like, how do people come to lose hold of their own minds, of their own ability to comprehend truth or reality? And I've been asking that question because of what we've seen, the sort of mass, I consider it psychosis, that the Republican Party has produced in this country by trafficking in alternative realities and then being able, through repetition from Fox News and Donald Trump and the tweets and all of these enablers, to make literally millions of Americans brainwashed. So seeing it happen like this very clearly, that's what just kept me. I found myself walking out of the room a lot where I simply couldn't. Insane. He drove these kids insane. They didn't know up from down, real from unreal, and he insinuated themselves into their lives by pretending to be their protector and they're essentially almost their savior. It all felt like the same kind of stuff that Fox News and the Trumpians do and have done over the years to so many. Anyway, if you have the stomach or are interested in psyops playing out before your eyes, and by the way, the guy also turns out to be just a serial fabulist. I mean, invented his life. I mean, it's mind blowing. Okay, that's all I have to say. Okay, seriously, that's it. I see our time's up. Thank you all. Pleasure. See you again tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.